For the past 4 or 5 months, I've been using the Sony a7R II to shoot every single video featured on this channel. But today, things are about to change because we're going to be ditching that extremely high quality camera and we're going to be making use of the camera on the back of my 4-year-old iPhone 5S. Now that might sound a little bit daft, but I have just received a package in the post that should hopefully help me out, and that is the ZHIYUN Smooth Q 3-axis gimbal. So I guess we should probably start things off by actually getting this thing out of its packaging. So if we lift up the lid right here, you can see that the Smooth Q actually comes in its own travel case, which is a massive positive for someone like me because I tend to chuck equipment around, throw it into my camera bag. I'm not particularly careful with it. Now if we lift off the lid of the case itself, you can see I got a bit of a surprise in that this gimbal is actually rose gold. Now there are a bunch of colours available. Rose gold wouldn't necessarily be my first choice, but it's nice to see that we've got some customization. So now that we have this thing out of the packaging, I guess we should probably get it set up and ready to go. And as you can see, that seems to be it. You hit this little red button right here and it's now level and it seems to be stable. I mean, I have this. This is like a big 3-axis stabilizer for that camera there, the a7R II, and this takes sort of 5 or 6 minutes to kind of balance and get everything set up, and it actually puts me off using it because it's such a pain in the backside to go from something like a tripod to a stabilizer like that, whereas this is just, it just boots up like instantly. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave behind the a7R II studio lights. They're not coming with me. I'm going to leave behind the sliders, everything that I use to make my videos as good as possible, and I'm just going to take this little thing right here. It feels really strange, but hopefully we can do a really good job. So with just 1GB left to spare in my 16GB iPhone, I headed off to one of my favourite locations to start shooting with the Smooth Q. Now when I started out I was using the ZHIYUN Play app, but unfortunately it just didn't seem to work with my camera. It couldn't find focus, so I had to switch over, and I have to say I'm very impressed with what came out. The footage is very stable and looks extremely smooth. However, there were 1 or 2 issues. Number 1 is you have to be really quite light-footed. Because this thing's very light and made of plastic, if you take a heavy step, it will shake the entire unit, which in turn will shake the camera. Now this isn't an issue that I faced with bigger gimbals that hold much larger camera units, because of course they're heavier and less likely to move. Now another thing that I occasionally ran into were micro jitters. Now this is an issue that I've had with every single gimbal that I've owned, but if you do something that the gimbal doesn't particularly like, for example, move in a certain way, then it will vibrate very briefly, causing a vibration through the camera, which will completely ruin the shot. Now you'll be happy to know that that wasn't particularly prevalent during today's shooting. It only happened once or twice, but I just thought I'd make you aware of it. However, those are very minor negatives, and I'm still a massive fan of this gimbal. I mean, it's got 12 hours of battery life, which means that you can shoot with it all day long, and you're never going to run into an issue. It's also very powerful, which means that you can use bigger and heavier phones, or potentially even interchangeable lenses on your phones without ever worrying about maxing out the weight limit. It has a bunch of different shooting modes, which makes it very versatile to use, and the best news is that it's really quite cheap. It only costs $140, which is considerably cheaper than the DJI Osmo Mobile, and worlds apart from bigger gimbals that we use with digital SLRs and bigger camera units. All in all, I'm incredibly impressed with the performance of the ZHIYUN Smooth Q, and I would highly recommend getting one if you're in the market for a mobile gimbal.